Have you ever noticed that the people with the most powerful stories are never the ones who played it safe? What if the real reason most people never succeed is not because they are incapable, but because they are terrified of risk? Think about it for a moment. Every great achievement you admire today started with someone standing at the edge of uncertainty, someone who had no guarantees, someone who heard the same voices you hear every day. Be careful, don't fail, play it safe. But here's the truth that most people never want to admit. A safe life rarely creates a remarkable story. And if you look closely at the people who truly changed their lives, their careers, or even the world, you will notice a common pattern. They didn't wait for certainty. They didn't wait for permission. And they definitely didn't wait until they felt comfortable. They moved forward while feeling scared. Because deep down they understood something powerful: the bigger the dream, the bigger the risk required to reach it. Most people grow up believing success is about talent, intelligence, or luck. They think some people are simply born with an advantage. But if you study the journeys of those who achieved extraordinary things, you'll find something very different. You'll find moments of doubt, moments of fear, moments where everything could have gone wrong. The difference was never the absence of fear. The difference was the decision to move forward anyway. See, risk is not the enemy of success. Risk is the doorway to it. Imagine two people standing at the same starting line. One chooses the safe road, predictable and comfortable. The other chooses the uncertain road, filled with challenges, mistakes, and unexpected turns. At the beginning, the safe road feels smarter. It feels responsible. It feels secure. But years later, something strange happens. The person who chose safety often looks back wondering, what if? What if they had tried? What if they had taken the chance? What if they had believed in themselves just a little more? Meanwhile, the person who took the risk may have stumbled, failed, or even started over multiple times. But they gained something far more valuable than comfort. They gained experience, growth, confidence, and most importantly, a story worth telling. Because the truth is simple. Without risk, there is no challenge. Without challenge, there is no growth. And without growth, there is no real success. So the real question is not whether risk exists in your life. The real question is this: are you willing to face it? Or will you spend the rest of your life wondering what could have happened if you had the courage to try? Let me tell you something most people don't realize until it's far too late. The life you want is almost always hiding behind a decision you are afraid to make. Think about the moments that define people's lives, the moments that change everything. They rarely arrive wrapped in comfort. They rarely come with a clear roadmap, and they almost never come with a guarantee that everything will work out. Instead, they arrive disguised as uncertainty. A job opportunity that feels too big for you, an idea that excites you but also terrifies you, a decision that forces you to step away from what is familiar and step towards something unknown. And in that moment, your mind does something very predictable. It begins to protect you. It starts listing every possible thing that could go wrong. What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if I lose everything? Those questions feel logical. They feel responsible. But here's the dangerous part. They quietly convince you to stay exactly where you are. And staying where you are feels safe until you realize something important. Comfort can slowly become a cage. The same routine that once felt secure can eventually feel suffocating. The same predictable path that once made you feel stable can begin to feel like you are walking in circles. Because deep down, human beings are not built for endless comfort. We are built for progress. We are built for challenge. We are built to grow. And growth always demands something from us. It demands courage. It demands action. It demands risk. Look at any meaningful achievement, and you will see this pattern everywhere. The entrepreneur who started a company without knowing if it would survive. The athlete who trained for years with no promise of victory. The artist who created something new while everyone else doubted them. None of them had certainty. What they had was a decision to try. And trying is powerful because it shifts something inside you. The moment you decide to step forward despite fear, you stop being controlled by it. You begin to discover abilities you didn't know you had. You become more resilient, more adaptable, more confident. But when you constantly avoid risk, the opposite happens. Your world slowly becomes smaller. Your possibilities shrink. Your confidence weakens because you never allow yourself to test your potential. And the greatest tragedy is not failure. Failure is temporary. Failure teaches. Failure strengthens. The real tragedy is never discovering what you were capable of, never knowing how far you could have gone, never seeing the person you might have become if you had just taken that first step into the unknown. Because in the end, the people who live the most meaningful lives are not the ones who avoided every risk. They are the ones who accepted that risk is simply the price of a life that matters. Now, here is something that sounds strange at first, but once you understand it, it changes the way you see failure forever. The people who succeed the most in life are often the ones who fail the most. That sounds backwards, doesn't it? Because from the moment we are young, we are trained to avoid failure at all costs. In school, we are rewarded for getting the right answers. At work, we are praised for avoiding mistakes. Society quietly teaches us that failure is embarrassing, something to hide, something to fear. But the real world doesn't work that way. In the real world, failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of the path to it. Think about a child learning to walk. They fall again and again. They lose balance. They stumble. They crash into things. But we never look at that child and say, maybe walking just isn't for you. No, we understand something important. Falling is simply part of learning. Yet somewhere along the way, as adults, we forget this truth. We begin to believe that if something doesn't work the first time, it must mean we are not good enough. So instead of trying again, we retreat. Instead of learning, we quit. And every time we quit, we miss an opportunity to grow stronger. The people who build remarkable lives understand something different. They understand that every attempt teaches you something valuable. Every mistake reveals information you didn't have before. Every failure sharpens your instincts. Failure is feedback. It tells you what works and what doesn't. It pushes you to adjust your approach. It forces you to become better than you were yesterday. And the interesting thing is this: when you stop fearing failure, you start taking smarter risks, you experiment more, you innovate more, you move faster because you are no longer paralyzed by the need for everything to be perfect. Perfection is the enemy of progress. So many people delay their dreams waiting for the perfect moment. They want the perfect plan, the perfect timing, the perfect circumstances. But perfection is an illusion. Life is messy. Opportunities rarely appear in perfect conditions. The people who succeed are not the ones who waited for perfection. They are the ones who started before they felt ready. They took the first step while their hands were still shaking. They spoke up even when their voice wasn't steady. They pursued their goals even when the outcome was uncertain. And with every attempt, they improved. With every setback, they became wiser. With every challenge, they became stronger. Eventually, something incredible happens. What once felt terrifying begins to feel normal. The risks that once seemed impossible begin to feel manageable. And the person who once doubted themselves starts to realize something powerful. Courage is not something you are born with. Courage is something you build every time you choose action over fear. Here is something most people misunderstand about courage. They think courageous people are fearless. They imagine that the people who take big risks must have some special kind of confidence that ordinary people don't have. But that is not how it works. Courageous people fear just like everyone else. Their hearts race, their minds fill with doubts. They imagine the same worst-case scenarios that everyone imagines. The difference is not the absence of fear. The difference is the decision they make while feeling it. Most people wait for fear to disappear before they act. They tell themselves, when I feel more confident, then I'll start. When I feel ready, then I'll take the risk. When I'm sure it will work, then I'll try. But that moment rarely comes. Confidence does not arrive before action. Confidence grows because of action. Think about the first time you tried something new. Maybe it was speaking in front of people. Maybe it was starting a new job. Maybe it was making a decision that could change your future. In the beginning, everything feels uncomfortable. Your mind is full of uncertainty. You question yourself constantly. But once you take that first step, something begins to change. You realize the fear didn't destroy you. You realize you are more capable than you thought. And with every step forward, the fear slowly loses its control over you. This is how courage is built, not through thinking, but through doing. Every time you face something difficult, you send a powerful message to yourself. You prove that you are stronger than the voice inside your head that tells you to quit. And that voice is very persuasive. It tells you to stay safe. It tells you to avoid embarrassment. It tells you that failure will define you. But here is the truth: failure does not define you. Avoidance does. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you train your mind to believe that challenges are dangerous. Over time, your world becomes smaller and smaller until you are living far below your true potential. But when you consistently choose courage, something incredible happens. Your identity begins to change. You stop seeing yourself as someone who avoids risk. You start seeing yourself as someone who can handle whatever comes next. And once that shift happens, opportunities begin to appear everywhere. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because your mindset did. You become the kind of person who says yes to challenges. You become the kind of person who learns quickly from mistakes. You become the kind of person who moves forward while others remain stuck in hesitation. And when people look at you from the outside, they might call you brave. They might call you confident. They might even call you lucky. But what they don't see are the moments when you were afraid and chose to move forward anyway. Because real courage is not loud. Real courage is a quiet decision you make again and again. Let me share a truth that many people only discover after years of regret. The greatest risk in life is not taking a risk at all. At first, that sounds strange, because when we think about risk, we imagine losing money, losing opportunities, or making mistakes that others might see. We imagine embarrassment, disappointment, or failure. But there is another kind of loss that is far more dangerous. It is the slow loss of potential. When you constantly avoid risk, something inside you begins to fade. Your curiosity becomes weaker. Your ambition becomes quieter. Your willingness to dream becomes smaller. Not because you don't have the ability, but because you stop giving yourself permission to try. And over time, the absence of risk creates a life that feels predictable, but deeply unfulfilled. You wake up, you follow the same routine, you do what is expected. Everything appears stable on the surface. But deep down, there is a quiet question that never goes away. Is this really all I'm capable of? That question is powerful because it reminds you that somewhere inside you there is more waiting to be explored, more ideas, more possibilities, more versions of yourself that have not yet been discovered. But discovering them requires something most people resist. It requires stepping outside the boundaries of comfort. Comfort is attractive because it feels safe. It protects you from criticism. It shields you from failure. It gives you the illusion that everything is under control. But comfort also has a hidden cost. It prevents growth. Imagine if every athlete decided to train only when it felt easy. Imagine if every inventor stopped the moment something didn't work. Imagine if every leader avoided decisions that carried risk. Progress would disappear. Nothing meaningful would ever change. Growth demands resistance. It demands challenge. It demands moments where you are unsure whether you can handle what comes next. And those moments are not signs that you are on the wrong path. They are signs that you are expanding beyond your previous limits. The people who build extraordinary lives understand this principle deeply. They know that discomfort is not something to avoid, it is something to embrace. Every uncomfortable conversation builds stronger relationships. Every difficult decision sharpens your leadership. Every uncertain step strengthens your confidence. And slowly, the things that once intimidated you begin to feel normal. The risks that once seemed enormous begin to feel manageable. This is how transformation happens, not in one dramatic moment, but through a series of courageous decisions made over time. So when you feel that tension between comfort and possibility, remember something important. Your future is not shaped by the moments when you played it safe. Your future is shaped by the moments when you chose growth over fear and stepped forward into uncertainty anyway. There is a moment that appears in every meaningful journey. A moment that separates the people who dream from the people who actually achieve something extraordinary. It is the moment when reality becomes difficult. At the beginning of any goal, everything feels exciting. The vision is clear, the motivation is high, and the future looks full of possibility. You imagine the success, the recognition, the breakthrough that will eventually come. But then something happens. Challenges begin to appear. Things move slower than expected. Plans don't work the way you imagine. People doubt you. Sometimes even the people closest to you question whether what you are doing makes sense. And in those moments, the excitement fades. The path suddenly feels heavy. This is the moment when most people quietly step away from their dream. Not because they stopped wanting it, but because the struggle makes them believe they chose the wrong path. But the truth is something very different. Struggle is not a signal to stop. Struggle is proof that you are doing something that matters. If you look at the journeys of people who created remarkable success, you will notice something surprising. Their stories are rarely smooth. In fact, the most inspiring stories are filled with obstacles, rejection, and unexpected setbacks. The entrepreneur whose first idea failed, the athlete who lost countless competitions before winning one, the creator whose work was ignored for years before it was finally recognized. These moments are not interruptions in the story. They are the story. Because success is never just about reaching the destination. It is about the transformation that happens along the way. Every challenge forces you to develop new skills. Every setback teaches you patience. Every moment of doubt pushes you to discover how committed you truly are. And commitment is what separates a passing interest from a meaningful pursuit. Anyone can be excited at the beginning. But only a few people are willing to continue when the excitement disappears and the hard work begins. Those people understand something powerful. They understand that difficulty is not an obstacle to success. Difficulty is the training ground for it. It builds resilience. It sharpens your thinking. It forces you to become someone stronger than you were before. And the interesting thing is that when you finally achieve something meaningful, people often focus only on the result. They see the success, the recognition, the outcome. But they rarely see the hidden years of struggle that made it possible. They don't see the nights when you questioned everything. They don't see the moments when quitting would have been easier. They don't see the courage it took to continue moving forward even when progress felt invisible. But those moments are where the real story is written. Because the greatest victories are not simply about reaching the top. They are about the person you become while climbing. There's another truth about success that many people struggle to accept. The path forward is rarely clear. We grow up believing that successful people must have had a perfect plan, that they knew exactly where they were going and exactly how they would get there. It's comforting to imagine that their journey was organized and predictable. But when you listen closely to the real stories behind success, you discover something surprising. Most of the time, they were figuring it out as they went. They didn't have every answer. They didn't see the entire path. They simply saw the next step, and they took it. That's one of the hardest things for people to accept. We want certainty before we move forward. We want guarantees before we invest our time, our effort, or our reputation. But life doesn't work that way. Clarity often comes after action, not before it. When you take the first step, new information appears. When you try something, you learn something. When you move forward, the next opportunity reveals itself. But if you stay frozen waiting for perfect clarity, nothing changes. Your world stays exactly the same. Imagine standing in a dark room with only a small flashlight. The light may only show you a few steps ahead. You cannot see the entire room. You cannot see the final destination. But you can see enough to move forward. Every step you take reveals a little more of the path. This is how progress actually works. Yet many people refuse to move until they can see the entire journey. And because that moment never comes, they remain exactly where they started. Meanwhile, the people who build extraordinary lives understand something important. You don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. They accept uncertainty as part of the process. They understand that mistakes will happen. They know that sometimes the direction will change. But instead of waiting for perfect answers, they keep moving, step by step, lesson by lesson. failure by failure. And slowly, something incredible begins to happen. What once looked like confusion begins to form a pattern. What once felt like random effort begins to produce results. What once felt like risk begins to feel like momentum. This is the hidden advantage of people who take action. Every step they take gives them knowledge that the people standing still will never gain. They become faster learners, stronger problem solvers, more confident decision makers. Not because they were born that way, but because they chose movement over hesitation. So if you ever feel uncertain about the future, remember something powerful. You don't need a perfect map to begin your journey. You only need the courage to take the next step, even when the entire path is not yet visible. Let me tell you about something that quietly shapes the direction of your life more than you might realize. The people you choose to listen to. When you decide to take a risk, something interesting happens. Suddenly, everyone seems to have an opinion. Some people will warn you about the dangers. Others will remind you how difficult the path might be. And a few will confidently explain why your idea probably won't work. At first, this can feel discouraging because many of these voices sound logical. They sound experienced. They sound like they are trying to protect you from making a mistake. But here is something important to understand. Not everyone who gives advice understands the journey you are trying to take. Many people give advice based on their own fears, not your potential. Someone who has never taken a big risk may believe that risks are always dangerous. Someone who has never chased a dream may believe that dreams are unrealistic. Someone who has chosen comfort may encourage you to choose comfort as well. And they may say these things with complete sincerity. They are not trying to harm you. They are simply projecting their own limits onto your possibilities. This is why successful people learn to be very careful about whose opinions they allow to shape their decisions. They listen, but they filter. They respect feedback, but they do not surrender their vision to every voice around them. Because if you allow the doubts of others to control your choices, you will slowly begin to doubt yourself. And self-doubt is powerful. It can stop a great idea before it ever begins. It can silence a voice that needed to be heard. It can convince a capable person that they are not ready yet. But here is the truth. Every meaningful achievement once looked unrealistic to someone. Every innovation was once considered impossible. Every person who eventually succeeded once stood at the beginning with people questioning their decision. The difference was not that they ignored everyone. The difference was that they chose carefully whose voices mattered. They listened to people who had experience. People who understood the journey. People who believed that growth requires courage. And most importantly, they learned to listen to a voice that many people ignore, their own. Because deep inside, you often know when something matters to you. You know when an idea excites you. You know when a path feels meaningful, even if it feels uncertain. That inner voice is not always loud, but it is powerful. And when you combine that voice with action, something remarkable happens. You stop living according to the limits others imagined for you. You start building a life that reflects the possibilities you believe in. And that is when your story truly begins to take shape. Here's something most people never admit out loud, but it's the hard truth about progress. Consistency beats talent every single time. You may know someone who seems naturally gifted, someone who appears to have an advantage in life. Maybe they're brilliant, talented, or lucky. But if you look closer, you'll realize something important. Their natural ability is only a fraction of the story. What separates people who achieve extraordinary things is the relentless persistence they bring every single day. Consistency is not glamorous. It doesn't show up in one big dramatic moment. It shows up quietly, in the choices you make when no one is watching. It shows up when you decide to practice one more time, read one more chapter, take one more step, or have one more conversation that moves you closer to your goal. Every time you choose action over hesitation, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's inconvenient, you are building momentum. You are strengthening your resilience. You are sending a signal to yourself that you can handle challenges and keep going no matter what. The people who achieve greatness understand that the journey is rarely a straight line. There will be setbacks. There will be failures. There will be moments where progress feels invisible. But what keeps them moving forward is not inspiration alone. It's the habit of consistency. Every effort compounds over time. Every decision to keep moving forward, no matter how small, adds up. 1 year, 5 years, 10 years down the road, those tiny choices have transformed into results that most people couldn't even imagine at the start. And here's the thing, consistency also builds confidence. When you show up for yourself day after day, you begin to trust your own capabilities. You realize that challenges, mistakes, and failures do not define you. They refine you. Most people give up too soon. They expect results overnight. They want immediate validation. They want the world to notice their effort right away. But life doesn't work that way. Results come to those who persist when it's hard, when it's frustrating, and when it feels like nobody cares. Consistency creates a story worth telling. It creates credibility. It builds trust, not only with others, but with yourself. And it transforms fear into competence, hesitation into mastery, and potential into achievement. So if you want to create real success, ask yourself this question: am I willing to do the work every day, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's unseen, even when it feels impossible? Because that daily decision to persist, to show up, to keep going, is the real engine behind every remarkable life. Here's the final truth about success that most people avoid thinking about. That's the one that separates ordinary lives from extraordinary ones. Your story only matters if you are willing to risk it. Think about it. Every meaningful achievement, every breakthrough, every life-changing moment required someone to step into the unknown. No guarantees, no safety nets, no certainty that it would work, and yet they moved forward anyway. The biggest misconception people have is believing success comes from comfort, from staying within boundaries, from waiting until everything feels safe. But safety never created a legend. Safety never inspired millions. Safety never transformed the world. The truth is life rewards the bold. Life rewards the people who accept that failure. Risk and discomfort are simply part of the price for a meaningful story. And here's the part most people don't realize: the longer you wait, the more expensive the risk becomes. The opportunities that exist today may vanish tomorrow. The ideas you have now may lose their magic if you never act. The person you could become will never appear if you stay frozen in fear. Every step into uncertainty builds character. Every risk you take strengthens resilience. Every failure you encounter teaches lessons that no amount of planning or theory could ever provide. These experiences become the foundation of your story, the story you will eventually tell yourself and others about what you accomplished, what you overcame, and who you became along the way. And here's the emotional truth: regret is far heavier than failure. People fear failure more than anything else, but failure is temporary. It's feedback. It's a teacher. It shows you what works, what doesn't, and what you are capable of. Regret, on the other hand, lingers. Regret is the ghost of a life that never had the courage to begin. So if you are waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect conditions, here is the reality: there will never be perfection. The timing will never feel exactly right. The unknown will always exist. The fear will always be present. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't is simple: they decided to act anyway. They embraced risk as the cost of growth. They understood that comfort is the enemy of achievement. They understood that courage is built by taking the first step, even when their legs are shaking, even when their mind is uncertain, even when everything inside screams to quit. And the most powerful part: once you take that first step, everything changes. The fear becomes manageable. The risks become challenges you can handle. The possibilities expand beyond what you imagine. You become someone who no longer waits for life to happen. You become the person who makes life happen. So here is the ultimate lesson: if you want a story worth telling, if you want a life that matters, you cannot avoid risk. You cannot stay comfortable. You cannot wait for guarantees, because no risk, no story, no success. Your story begins the moment you step forward.